Right now, you can make fire with one bored little movement of your thumb. Click. That is it. You do not thank the lighter. You do not gather your family around to celebrate. If it takes 2 clicks, you may even decide the lighter is rubbish. Now imagine that same flame is the only one your group has. Nobody knows when lightning will provide another. Rain is coming. And tonight the darkness contains several animals that would be delighted to discover you are suddenly cold, blind, and edible. You need to move camp. So what do you pack? The answer may sound like something a confused caveman invented 5 minutes after eating the wrong plant. You pack a mushroom, not for dinner, and not for a vision quest. You set it smoldering, wrap it carefully, and walk away carrying yesterday's fire inside it. And we know this was more than a clever survival theory, because one prehistoric traveler died high in the Alps with almost the entire system still beside him. Stone, spark-making mineral, charcoal, leaves, bar containers, and mushrooms. But before we open his 5,000-year-old fire kit, you need to understand why keeping one tiny ember alive may have been one of the most stressful jobs in human history. Go back around 1.8 million years. Deep inside Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa, ancient bones were burned. Not near the entrance, where a natural grass fire might reach them. They were found far inside the cave, beside stone tools, in a place where fire almost certainly had to be carried. That means an early human ancestor, probably Homo erectus, walked into the darkness with light, which is incredible. It is also not the same as knowing how to make light. Imagine you find a tree burning after a lightning strike. You take a branch. You bring it home. Congratulations, you have fire. Now do not let it die, ever, because you may not know how to bring it back. Someone has to feed it before sleeping, protect it from rain, check the coals in the morning, and if your group leaves, move it without setting themselves, the food, or the nearest child on fire. No pressure. Could you carry a flaming branch? Technically, yes. You could also carry soup in your hands. The fact that something is possible does not make it a good transport system. A burning branch is hot, bright, smoky, and constantly trying to become a much shorter branch. Wind makes it burn faster. Rain kills it. Drop it on dry grass, and you have invented a completely different problem. What you really want is not a flame. You want something that glows slowly, something that can breathe without bursting in a fire, something light enough to carry and stubborn enough to survive the walk. Ancient humans found that thing growing on dead trees. Tinder fungi are not the soft little mushrooms you slice on a pizza. Many are hard, shelf-shaped growths that look like a horse hoof has somehow become attached to a tree. Break one open, and you find a dense layer of fine fibers inside. Dry those fibers, prepare them properly, touch them to a hot coal, and something wonderful happens. The fungus smolders. Noto flam. No dramatic torch. Just a quiet orange glows slowly, eating its way through the material. You could wrap that glowing piece with bark, fresh leaves, moss, or other material that protected it while still allowing a little air inside. Too much air and it burned away. Too little and it suffocated, but get it right and the ember could stay alive while you walked. Then you reach camp, open the bundle, place the glow inside dry grass, blew gently, added twigs, and watch the old fire wake up again. It was a prehistoric power bank. Except if you forgot to charge this one, everyone froze. Now put yourself in the carrier's place. You are walking through wind and damp grass, checking a smoking mushroom every few minutes while the rest of the group trusts you with warmth, cooked food, light, and predator protection. What happens if the glow looks weak? Do you open the wrapping and risk the wind? Do you leave it alone and hope? How often do you check? How much fungus do you bring? And if it dies, are you going to be the person who announces that tonight's dinner is raw? This was not luggage. It was a responsibility. Picture the walk. The sky darkens. Rain starts tapping the leaves. The fungus is still smoking, but less than before, and every time you unwrap it to check, you release heat and invite water inside. Behind you, a child is tired. Ahead of you, the new campsite is still hours away. Everyone can see the same problem, but nobody can solve it by pressing a button. Would the group blame the carrier if the ember died? Maybe. Would they have carried several backups, split between different people, so one accident could not erase the fire? Almost certainly whenever they could. Humans did not need a management seminar to understand that giving one nervous person the only flame was a questionable plan. And this may have shaped the group itself. Fire demanded attention, memory, cooperation, and trust. Somebody knew which fungus worked. Somebody knew how tightly to wrap it. Somebody had made the mistake of wrapping it too tightly before, and ensured nobody repeated that particular cold evening. Keeping fire alive was not just trick, it was shared knowledge under pressure. But now we hit a frustrating problem. If the mushroom did its job, it slowly destroyed the evidence. So how do we know ancient people really used fungi this way? For most of prehistory, we do not find the glowing mushroom itself. Of course we do not. The useful part burned, and whatever survived usually rotted. Archaeology preserves stone axes wonderfully. Archaeology is less helpful when your most important object is a damp mushroom you deliberately set on fire. What survives are the pieces around it. You find hearths in places natural flames could not reach, minerals that produce sparks, tools marked by repeated striking, and, in a few freakishly lucky places, mushrooms protected by mud or ice. The first big upgrade appears at Barnham in eastern England. Around 400,000 years ago, humans kept fires burning there, leaving behind scorched ground, stone tools cracked by heat, and 2 pieces of iron pyrite nearby. Pyrite produces hot sparks when struck against the right stone, and it did not naturally belong where it was found. Someone brought it. That detail changes the whole story. If carrying an ember is like protecting a phone that can never be recharged, flint and pyrite are the charger. Humans were no longer limited to stealing fire from lightning and desperately keeping alive. They could begin again. Well, if they knew what they were doing. Try making fire with a tiny spark in cold wind, and you will quickly develop great respect for matches because you need dry tinder, the correct angle, careful hands, and the emotional stability to watch your first 12 sparks accomplish absolutely nothing. This gave tinder fungus a second job. It could carry an old ember, but when dried and prepared, it could also catch a new spark and protect that weak glow until it became a flame. By Neanderthal times, even a hand axe may have doubled as part of the fire kit. Researchers found microscopic marks on some stone tools that match repeated striking against pyrite. Imagine that. Your axe cuts meat, works wood, and helps light the fire. The prehistoric multi-tool had arrived. Every feature was still just rock, but let us not be ungrateful. So the system makes sense. The experiments work. The stone and minerals survive. But where are all the mushrooms? For that, we need a village swallowed by mud. About 7,000 years ago, people built a settlement beside Lake Banyoles in what is now northeastern Spain. The village is called La Draga. Over time, the ground became waterlogged. Bad for anyone hoping to keep their floor dry. Fantastic for future archaeologists. The wet, low-oxygen mud preserved objects that normally disappear, including wood, cord, plant material, and 74 pieces of fungus. 74. That is not one random mushroom that fell out of a tree and confused a research team. The fungi came from different woodland habitats. Many were conveniently portable, some had been cut or worked, and nearly every type that could be identified had a known use as tinder. Were the villagers saving them for soup? Only if the recipe called for seasoned roof tile. These fungi were woody, tough, and terrible food. The much better explanation is that people deliberately collected them, carried them back, and stored them for future fires. What archaeologists found at La Draga was probably the spare supply. Dry tinder waiting for a spark. Extra pieces waiting to carry an ember. The prehistoric drawer full of batteries. And that gives us the mushroom. But the most satisfying piece of the puzzle was not sitting in mud. It was lying face down in ice. In 1991, 2 hikers in the Alps saw a body emerging from a melting glacier. At first, they assumed they had found a recently deceased mountaineer. They were off by more than 5,000 years. The man became known as Ötzi the Iceman, and he had died while crossing the mountains with a copper axe, a flint knife, arrows, an unfinished bow, carefully made clothing, and an arrowhead buried in his shoulder. So, yes, the trip had complications. But Ötzi had prepared for the cold. Among his equipment were flint, pyrite, and a dark mass made from processed hoof fungus. This was tinder, ready to catch a spark. He also carried another kind of fungus, birch polypore, threaded onto leather strips and possibly used as medicine. Ötzi was not wandering around with one mysterious mushroom because prehistoric people were quirky. He had selected different fungi for different jobs. Then there were his 2 lightweight birch bark containers. One was blackened inside. It still contained charcoal fragments and fresh-looking maple leaves. Why put charcoal and leaves in a bark box? Because the box may have carried a living coal. Wrap hot embers in fresh leaves, place them inside the container, limit the airflow, and you have a portable fire that can survive for hours. When you stop, you open it, add tinder, blow on the glow, and get warmth without starting from a tiny spark. Ötzi appears to have carried both options. a live ember for speed, with flint, pyrite, and prepared fungus for backup. He had redundancy more than 5,000 years before your laptop began asking whether you wanted to save to the cloud. And suddenly the entire story is sitting beside one dead traveler. The bark container explains how you protect the coal. The leaves control the heat and airflow. The charcoal carries yesterday's hearth. The fungus catches the glow. The flint and pyrite restart everything if the ember dies. This was not a pile of random wilderness junk. It was a fire system. And here is the part one find genuinely amazing. None of those objects is very impressive alone. A rock, a lump of mineral, a piece of bark, some leaves, and a dead tree fungus you would probably walk past without noticing. But put them together, add the knowledge inside one human brain, and a person can carry warmth through an alpine pass. That is what humans do. We turn ordinary things into systems, then teach the system to someone else. So were ancient humans literally walking around with burning mushrooms? Sometimes, yes. Historical accounts, practical experiments, and the surrounding archaeological evidence all show that slow-smoldering fungus works as an ember carrier, while many people would also have carried it dry, ready to catch a coal or spark when needed. The mushroom could preserve a fire. It could help resurrect one. And because the burning version consumed itself, the clearest evidence often comes from the unused spares, the pieces waiting in a muddy village or packed beside a man who never completed his journey. Over time, firemaking became easier. Iron and steel produced better sparks. Tinder boxes kept dry material ready. Matches arrived. Then lighters made the entire ancient operation disappear beneath one thumb. The skill vanished so completely that today you can see hoof fungus on a tree and think, weird mushroom, while your ancestor might have seen tonight's dinner, tomorrow morning's warmth, and the reason a child survived the cold. So here is the full picture. Early humans carried precious natural fire into caves. Traveling groups learned to hide embers inside slow-burning material. Tinder fungus turned a hearth into something you could take with you. Flint and pyrite made dead fires restartable. A waterlogged village preserved the spare mushrooms. And Ötzi entered the Alps carrying a complete fire kit built from stone, bark, leaves, charcoal, and fungus. All of that leads back to your thumb. The next time a lighter takes 2 clicks and you feel personally betrayed, remember what one flame once demanded. The right tree, the right fungus, dry tinder, spark-making stone, careful wrapping, constant attention, and knowledge passed from one person to another for more generations than anyone could count. You are not merely making fire faster. You are skipping nearly 2 million years of anxiety. And maybe that is why the burning mushroom matters. It was small, ugly, and easy to overlook. But inside it, our ancestors found a way to carry something that should have stayed behind. They did not just carry fire. They carried another night. If you had to cross those mountains with only one option, would you trust the live ember or the fire-making kit?